Well, hello, everybody. Sounded like some of you have heard of the Babylon Bee. That's a good thing. Oof, I had a very stiff drink before I came up here, so I guess this is what it feels like to be Kamala Harris on stage. I'm a little lightheaded. And the clock is already ticking, so I'm already thinking about the significance of the passage of time. But it's great that you heard of the bee. The bee has had a wild journey, and it's been insane, the path that we've been on ever since we started making jokes on the internet back in 2016. That was just 8 years ago. We turned 8 this year, actually, which is, it's... But some would say that's old enough for puberty blockers, which we disagree with around here. But 8 years, in 8 years, we've accomplished a lot. We've actually toppled The Onion to become the world's most popular satire site. Can you believe that? We have more traffic and engagement than The Onion, and we launched with the tagline. This was the tagline in 2016 when we launched, your trusted source for Christian news satire. How did they let that happen? It's wild. It's really wild. But a common misconception that I often come across, and I heard it tonight, actually. A couple of people that have talked to me tonight have said, what I hear everywhere I go, your job must be so easy because there's so much to make fun of. There's so much madness in the world. It must be really easy being in satire. And they're actually wrong about that because we have to exaggerate what's going on in the world. We have to caricature. That's what satire does. We caricature what's happening. We actually go a step beyond the truth in the direction the truth is pointing. How in the world are you supposed to do that in an age this? You guys read real headlines all the time, and you must think to yourself, this has to be a Babylon Bee headline. How is this not the Babylon Bee? I see those headlines all the time myself, and I wonder that. But that's the challenge of writing satire. It's actually extremely difficult to write satire when the world is this crazy, honestly. And I try to put it in terms that people will understand. I say, imagine if your job is to write jokes that are funnier than what Democrats are doing in real life. Think about it. Imagine if your job is to write jokes that are funnier than a Kamala Harris speech. Or Joe Biden. I've got 2 words for you. Made in America. Or when he reads pause off the teleprompter. It's insane. But that's the challenge, is staying a step ahead of reality. What ends up happening, we do this all the time. We'll tell a joke, and at the time we told it, it was genuine satire. It was fake news. And then it comes true. And it doesn't always take that long for it to come true. We've had these situations where actually these jokes come true extremely quickly. Actually, it's better to show than tell. So I'm actually going to, let's see here. I've got auto lock turned on my phone, which is not what I want. But let me show you some examples. I'm going to show you first a Babylon Bee headline. Then I'm going to show you the actual headline that came along later on following that. So this one was Gavin Newsom named U-Haul Salesperson of the Year. And literally a month later, this headline came out in Fox Business. Californians fleeing for Texas so fast, U-Haul runs out of trucks for them. To improve public perception, Kamala Harris taking likability lessons from Hillary Clinton. It's obviously a joke. Who would ever do that? But then here's a real headline. White House asks Hillary staffers how to make Kamala more likable. And it's like the same image, too. You've got cackling Kamala there in both. I love this one. Study finds anyone still wearing a mask at this point is probably just super ugly. I always have to scan the room after I throw this up there and just see. This is not a mask-wearing crowd. Yeah. But look at this real headline and how similar it is. Unattractive individuals wear masks more often than others. Are you starting to feel our pain? Is it making sense now why this is challenging? Staying ahead of the curve of this stuff? This is one of my all-time favorites. I love Trump jokes because, we have fun with Trump. We love Trump at the Bee, but we like to make Trump jokes here and there. And this one checked a lot of boxes for me because Trump, I have done more for Christianity than Jesus. It's the kind of thing you could actually hear him saying. And so we told this joke, and then people were sharing it like crazy on the left in particular, thinking it was true. Including, there were at least 2 New York Times reporters that I know of that shared this, believing it was a real headline. And so, of course, Snopes steps in and fact checks it and rates it false. But then, Donald Trump says nobody has done more for Christianity than him. Speaking to Gene Bailey on Flashpoint, he said, nobody has done more for Christianity or for evangelicals or for religion itself than I have. He took it further than the joke. It's all religion, anyone. I've done more than anybody, not just Jesus. That's one of my all-time favorites. So what do you do with the fact check now? Because it was rated false initially, but now it happened. We got to reach out to Snopes and have them update that one. But this is one of the challenges that we face in doing satire is the staying ahead of the curve stuff. But we've actually faced a lot of censorship too, where we've run into problems actually just telling these jokes on these big tech platforms where they don't like comedy that's pointed at their ideas. They hate that. And you have to think about, why do they hate that so much? Why are they so bothered by it? Because, the left has kind of dominated comedy for a long time. The Babylon Bee came and filled a void where nobody was really doing what we do from our perspective, from our worldview. No one was doing that. And we start doing it, and they don't want us to do it. They want us to stop. And it was the weirdest way that this started, where we were publishing these jokes, and they started giving them a truth rating. CNN purchases industrial-sized washing machine to spin news before publication. Do you think that's true or false? Well, the dopes at Snopes rated it false, and then Facebook sent us a message and said if we continued publishing fake news and misinformation on their platform, they would deplatform and demonetize us. And we're like, okay, wait, out of all the things that we've published, this one is the one that you're going to get us with? Really? I had an email exchange with the president of Snopes at the time. I guess they have new ownership now, but the guy that was running it at the time, I emailed him. I was like, what is it about, why do you choose these jokes? How do you decide which ones you're going to rate? And he said, well, it's based on reports. People have to ask us, is this true? And if enough people ask us, we will do a rating on it. I'm like, come on. Show me one person who thought that was true. CNN praises Taliban for wearing masks during attack. Now, this went crazy viral because people believed it was true. And this is one of the criticisms of the Babylon Bee is that the New York Times said that we're trafficking in misinformation under the guise of satire. They're suggesting that we're misleading people on purpose, but if this is believable, whose fault is that? I love this. Ocasio-Cortez appears on The Price is Right, guesses everything is free. It's a good Photoshop, so it looks real. And she's stupid. That was rated false. We were threatened again with more penalties. Ninth Circuit Court overturns death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Now, I never expected this to get fact-checked. I thought we published this shortly after she passed away, and I thought everyone was going to be mad that we told this joke too soon. You always get that, oh, that's too soon. No, they wanted to know if it was true. And USA Today was the one that fact-checked this one. They rated it false. And they cited 15 sources in the refutation of this joke. They were making phone calls. They're checking the Ninth Circuit Court's website to see if this really happened. That's someone's job, is to read jokes like this and then research whether or not it was true. I think it would have been as simple as just saying, well, it came from the Babylon Bee. Yeah, it's satire. And how do you overturn someone's death? What is that, a resurrection? Like, I don't know. But it's ridiculous. You know, this is one, it's like there's been this war on jokes because jokes are misinformative since when? You know, we have a stand-up comedian in the room with us tonight. We have Rob Schneider here. Everybody give it up for Rob. I mean, could you imagine if you're doing a stand-up set and you tell a joke and it's obviously some kind of exaggeration or hyperbole, something like that, and someone stands up in the audience to yell, "That's not true." Fact-checking you in the middle of it. It's absurd. Yeah, it's comedy. But there is truth to the jokes, though. That's the thing. And that's where, you know, I thought these were just humorless scolds who were like, they just didn't have a sense of humor. But what I've come to realize over the course of the years that I've been running the Bee and the kinds of challenges that we've encountered, it's not really about, like, being humorless. It's about the fact that these jokes are communicating a truth that they don't like. The humor is a vehicle for truth delivery, and it's the truth that they don't want getting out. And humor is one of the most effective ways of doing it. You know, G.K. Chesterton put it like this. He said, humor can get in under the door while seriousness is still fumbling at the handle. And I think that's why they don't like our jokes. And so they keep throwing up all these roadblocks. You know, they try to do things that will make it harder and harder to continue doing comedy that actually challenges the popular narrative instead of promoting the popular narrative, which is what so many of the so-called comedians today do. They stand up there and it's like they're preaching to their audience and they want applause rather than laughter. It's just the most bizarre thing. Well, we don't do that. You know, we're trying to actually poke holes in the narrative and tell the truth. And we had a very wild and bizarre situation on our hands when we saw a real headline that looked like this. USA Today names transgender Biden official as one of its Women of the Year. Talk about seeing real headlines that should be satire, but somehow aren't. This should be a Babylon Bee headline, shouldn't it? And that's the problem, is we read this and we're like, okay, we have to do a joke about this, but how? It feels like it's straight out of a South Park episode, and we're supposed to parody it. How do you caricature this? And one of the ideas, you know, we were struggling to try to come up with something, and we're like, I got nothing. This is crazy. Like, first of all, this is offensive to women, isn't it? I'm not a biologist, but I think there are some women in the room tonight. This must be offensive to you. It's got to be. So we're thinking, like, well, what do? We have to do a joke about this. And so we're pitching these ideas back and forth. And one of our writers, his name is Joel, he said, you know, what if we just named Rachel Levine our pick for Man of the Year? And so Kyle, our chief editor, replied to me. He goes, haha, dude, you're going to get us kicked off Facebook and Twitter. And he said, yeah, I know, LOL. They're not taking this very seriously. I'm like, guys, this is our business we're talking about here. But it's actually kind of an important thing to highlight that conversation because that is exactly how they want you thinking before you speak. If I say this, there will be a penalty. If I say this, I'm going to get deplatformed. I'm going to lose my account. I'm going to lose my followers. At the time we were contemplating telling this joke, we had 1.4 million followers on Twitter. So we'd be losing access to that audience if we actually got kicked off Twitter for telling this joke. But, you know, we talked about it a little bit. And we're like, but doesn't that mean it's the joke that we should tell? Aren't these the jokes that have to be told, the ones that they're going to try to punish you for telling? Absolutely, right? Could we respect ourselves if we didn't hit send on this one? So we hit send tweet and published this. The Babylon Bee's Man of the Year is Rachel Levine. And they were not happy. The trans activists immediately got a hold of this one and mass reported it. They were like, this is hate speech. This is misgendering. I happen to think it's misgendering when a man refers to himself as a woman. Hate speech. This was, it was considered punching down. That's kind of the new, it's not that new, but it's been around for a little while, but it's new in terms of how it's actually enforced as a policy now on these platforms. You know, Facebook has a prohibition against punching down. You're not allowed to punch. And what does that mean? You know, you think about what does it mean to punch down? First of all, well, I'll explain. It's basically wokeness applied to comedy. It's wokeness applied to comedy where you have people who are oppressors up here. They have power and privilege. And then you have people down here who are the oppressed. They lack power and privilege. And if you joke about anything related to them, either themselves or something that they've said, you're punching down on the marginalized and the oppressed. Rachel Levine is a white male high-ranking government official. How in the world are we punching down when we tell a joke about this, especially when this is an idea that's being pushed on us from all the cultural and institutional power, from the top down? We're punching back at that, and we're being told that we're punching down. That's crazy. And when it comes to doing comedy, too, when someone tells you you can't punch down, and you have to start thinking about that before you tell a joke, you go through this weird thought process where instead of thinking, is this funny, you have to think to yourself, is this going to get me in trouble? And imagine thinking like this as a comedy writer. You're like, you know what? I shouldn't joke about those people. They're beneath me. That doesn't sound right, does it? Kind of maybe a little condescending. I'm up here. I'm powerful and privileged. I can't joke about those people. They're beneath me. Really? I think the best way of treating each other equally is to joke about each other indiscriminately. But it's what they want you to think is they want you to think, you know what, I shouldn't say this because it's going to come with you guys don't need to look at this anymore, right? Some of you have eaten recently. It's very rude. They want you questioning whether you should say it, and of course, we went ahead and said it anyway, and then they wanted us to take it down. You know, it was flagged for hateful conduct, so they want us to take it down. But it's that first decision that we had to make, do we publish it or not, where that would have been soft censorship. I like to distinguish between two kinds of censorship. You have the hard censorship where they actually take your content down. And then you have soft censorship where you silence yourself because you fear consequences. And I'm convinced for every case of hard censorship where they're removing content, there are a million cases of people censoring themselves and doing the tyrant's work for him. And I'm proud to say that we didn't do that at the first stage when we were thinking of publishing the joke, and we didn't do it at the second stage when they told us you have to check a box and admit that you engaged in hateful conduct and delete this joke or you will remain locked out of your account forever. And we immediately refused. We said, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. Even if it means giving up our audience, because if everybody just continues to go along with this for forever, then when is it ever going to change? At some point, somebody has to say no, right? And it really sucked that it had to be us. But we really felt compelled that this is the right thing to do. And by the way, I had no idea that Elon Musk was going to get involved in this whole situation. What ended up happening, I'll just tell you the kind of course of events that happened from here. It was, we got a message to our Twitter account from Elon asking us, hey, I heard you guys got suspended. Is that true? And so I went into the account. You know, I got a notification of the message. I tried to reply to it. I couldn't because I was locked out of the account. I could view it, but I couldn't reply to it. So I'm like, Elon's trying to get in touch, and I can't even talk to him unless I delete this tweet. So we were kind of stuck wanting to tell him what happened, but we were unable to. And then a couple of days later, he didn't get a response from us, so he dug up one of our numbers and called, and he was like, tell me this isn't true, that, you know, comedy must be legal. You guys really got suspended for telling this joke. Is it really true? And we're like, yeah, it's true. And he goes, okay, well, what do you do now? And we're like, well, they're telling us we have to delete it. And he's like, okay, just delete it. Get your account back. And we explained why we wouldn't do that. We're like, no, we can't do that. If we do that, we're giving in and we're allowing them to continue. We're just playing a role in perpetuating this madness, this tyranny. And it is tyranny. And his response to that was classic. He said, you know what, you guys have integrity. That's really cool. Maybe I need to buy Twitter. Guys, we thought he was joking. We laughed. We weren't cheering. We were like, oh, that's funny now, but really, what's the solution here? You know, we're locked out of our account. Well, 8 months later, after sitting in Twitter jail next to Donald Trump, he walks into Twitter headquarters carrying a sink and says, let that sink in. Changes his bio to Chief Twit, and then sends us a DM. It was the coolest message ever. He sent it to me personally. He said, do you want the Babylon Bee restored? There will be no censorship of humor. That's pretty cool. And I think the really profound lesson that we can learn from Elon, and I think from the Bee too, and the principled stand that we took on this issue, is that you have to be willing to pay a price for freedom. You have to. And in his case, you know, in our case, the price was significant. We had over 1 million followers, and we were willing to give that up. We now have 4 million, by the way. So it backfired a little bit. They call that the Streisand effect, don't they? When you're trying to suppress something and you amplify it, it backfires. It does help to have rich friends. But we sat down with him at Twitter headquarters and handed him an IOU for $44 billion. And that sounds, you know, it's a big price to pay to restore freedom of speech to people who've had it removed from them, you know, had that right taken away. This is the modern public square, you know, where you should be able to talk, and you can't. And he was willing to pay a price not just monetarily, but also with his reputation. He's now public enemy number 1, well, maybe number 2, just behind Donald Trump. Seriously, it's Trump and then Elon. Who else? They're right at the top. And it's because of this. It's because he speaks out about the gender madness and because he stands for free speech. He's considered an extremist. That is absolutely wild. But he was willing to pay a price on both ends, both the financial and with his reputation, in order to do something about it. And that is crucial. We have to be willing to do something, or else we're always going to be stuck in the same situation. And so I'm thankful to Elon that he was able and willing to do that. And I didn't sign the IOU, so I don't actually owe him $44 billion. But, you know, it's a case. Elon understands something extremely important, too, beyond just the fact that you need to be willing to pay a price for freedom. He understands that the freedom to talk, the freedom to engage in discourse where you debate ideas, is necessary because bad ideas are everywhere, and they're flourishing. And if the system is rigged so that they flourish unchecked, it's bad for humanity. It's bad for civilization. Bad ideas, unchallenged and taken seriously, have catastrophic consequences. And there's perhaps no better illustration of that than the stuff that's going on with the gender madness and how it's being imposed on kids. You know, our culture is cultivating confusion in children, and then when they've fully lost their sense of who and what they are, we are supposed to affirm them in that confusion. And then the treatment is sterilization and mutilation, damaging the body to match the broken mind, which we broke. And that's just horrible. And Elon has a very personal story about why he thinks that's so horrible. But he believed that bad ideas need to be challenged, they need to be dealt with, they need to be refuted, and they need to be ridiculed. And that's the importance of the Babylon Bee, is the Babylon Bee ridicules bad ideas so that they aren't taken seriously. You know, a sane society laughs at absurdity. And we stop. This is part of the reason that we've gotten to the place that we're at right now, where all this terrible stuff is happening, is because we started taking these bad ideas seriously and treating them with deference and respect, when we should have been mocking them the entire time. And we're not the only ones. You know, there's plenty of people who are mocking them. You know, Rob has done a great job of that. There's other comedians who are doing that. There's even comedians on the left who are doing that. Dave Chappelle's a good example. Seinfeld's pushing back on it. Bill Maher did a monologue on the gender stuff recently. I don't know if you saw that, but he did a monologue on the gender stuff where he was talking about how there's this rising trend in this gender insanity, and eventually everybody's going to be either gay or transgender. And he was like, listen, we can't just listen to kids, whatever they identify as, and affirm that. The world would be filled with cowboys and princesses. He said, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a pirate. Thank God no one scheduled me for peg leg surgery and eye removal. And I laughed when I heard that joke. I laughed, but it's actually really profound what he's doing there. Because what he's doing is he's chipping away at the validity of an idea that never should have been taken seriously in the first place, and he's doing it at a time when it's considered hateful conduct. So that takes boldness. I think that was profound. I think it was right in line with what George Orwell said when he said, every joke is a tiny revolution. It is. You have to be willing to make those jokes. Tell the ones you're not supposed to tell. You have to be willing to speak. You have to be courageous, because courage really is contagious. It will spread like wildfire. Once people have that permission, they know that they can also stand up and that it won't necessarily penalize them. The Babylon Bee is a great example of how when you take a stand, it doesn't mean you destroy yourself. When you take a stand, you'll inspire others to do it too. So I hope to encourage you to be bold, be courageous, go out there, speak the truth unapologetically, and yes, please, ridicule bad ideas. Thank you.